Welcome to Blamestorming. Blamestorming. In a post-truth world, there's plenty of blame to go around. 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 Join Dave Cyrus and Marissa Smith as they blamestorm about today's hot topics.
Hey guys, I'm Dave Cyrus. With me as always is Marissa Smith.
Hey guys.
Our guests today are David Feldman.
Hello.
And Tom Goss.
Hello.
How we doing, everybody? Now, Tom here. Tom is in town for the old Skank Fest.
Yeah.
He's excited to do some. You can do stand up at the Skank Fest. You're gonna roast battle. You got a whole thing lined up, right?
Yeah, doing a live podcast, and yeah.
Now, David Feldman is also an accomplished roast battler.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's 0-2.
Hey.
But his losses were to Pat Dixon and Kurt Metzger.
Oh, okay.
And I got robbed.
Yeah.
And I had to write basically all his jokes
You're right.
the day of because he didn't write any. So yes. I feel like those aren't as bad a losses as we should think of them, or at least as I'm going to frame them.
What is Skankfest?
It's the Legion of Skanks guys. They run a festival and they asked us to do a podcast.
Yeah, they're a very popular podcast, Legion of Skanks.
Yeah.
And they do this yearly festival where they do roast battles. There's naked roasting going on. James Pontillo, who's been on this show, is going to be naked roasting Keith Carey,
who's my co-host and my roommate.
Yes, on the Mean Boys podcast. That's, of course, Tom's very much more popular than us podcast, the Mean Boys.
Well, we just speak more truth to power on my show.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
With a name like Mean Boys.
Now, and David has the David Feldman Show, which is a very long-running, very popular podcast. How many?
By long running, you're talking about each episode.
Yes, it's a 4-hour fucking show. It goes on forever.
Oh, isn't that exhausting to do?
No.
No?
I'm a very sick man.
He does it twice a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
It gets to be 4 hours. Well, he gets like 1 hour interviews per person. Then he gets you've had some big people on it too.
I've had Dave Cyrus.
Yes, you've had Judd Apatow.
Yeah.
You have Howie Klein. We talked about Corey Brett Schneider. Yeah, the big stars like that.
I sometimes have really big names.
No, you do. You got did you have Howie Mandel recently?
No, but
Was
I've
that-
had
what am I thinking
Martin Short and Robert Smigel, Robin Williams, Bob Saget, Nathan Lane, Andrea Martin.
Yeah, that's
wow.
I've had some big
Now I know
big people.
You have a very high profile show. Do you happen to know off the top of your head how many reviews you have on iTunes? Because it's probably a lot. I think I've looked at it. It's definitely several hundred. And Tom's show actually was able to get a lot of iTunes reviews because
we offer to hurt ourselves if you leave enough. That's mostly
Really?
It's really worked. It's really helped them. I mean,
really, yeah.
So Dave, what are you going to do to yourself?
I mean,
No, do it to Tom.
I feel like doing this show is the sacrifice alone. But yeah, Tom. Now, you guys you haven't been hurt for reviews yet, right? It was mostly
No, not for reviews. No, I mean when I say hurt for reviews, one of my co-hosts, Connor McSpadden, had never had soup before, and he threw a giant. One of his exes tried to make soup, and it turned into a huge fight, and we made fun of him. And basically, he agreed that when we hit 400 reviews, he'd eat soup at a live show. We were at like 100. And immediately everyone left a review to see him eat cream of broccoli soup in Chicago.
and he hated it.
He hated it. He threw a huge fit about it. And it's, so that's,
Why is he soup phobic?
He eats applesauce, peanut butter sandwiches, pizza.
End of list.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. You'll throw in a graham cracker when he's feeling naughty. Like he's
But you've hurt yourself for the show. Like
yeah, most of them.
Like he's done a lot. They do a live show where usually when they do a live show, they have a what do you call it? A torturer?
Dominatrix.
Yeah. Who comes up and if the joke isn't, and they tell jokes and if the joke does
And
badly,
she hits you with a paddle.
yeah, pretty hard.
Yeah, no, our favorites. We did a show in God, what was the name of the town in Indiana? We did it in the City of Churches in Indiana, and we did it during the day. It was for a festival, and we had our dominatrix for that show was also transgendered in Indiana, which is not the most accepting place. It was during the day. It pretty much was a TGI Fridays overlooking a AAA baseball game, and we had our like pocket of fans that were there, and then everyone else looked horrified because she was electrocuting us on stage at like 6 p.m.
Mean Boys sounds more like Sub Boys.
I've done my share of ambush shows where audiences don't know a show is happening, and you feel bad enough just doing stand up for people who weren't expecting it.
No, we had our fan in front of the show, Alexis, electrocuting us on stage.
Good for her.
Does that feel good to be?
I don't. I mean, I have no connection to my body anymore. I don't. It doesn't feel good. I mean, you notice it, but
I've seen you. You're definitely in pain.
It hurts, but it's not like it doesn't hurt in terms of it doesn't injure you. It just hurts.
Tom didn't have a bad enough of a childhood to learn to enjoy being electrocuted on stage. That's
a private thing. It's a private. You just get rid of the other people, and then I'll enjoy it. But yeah, no, it's
So now, what were they using on you?
a
like
BDSM electric wands.
Okay, and then where were they
Mostly the nipples.
Okay.
Yeah, that's rough.
It was a pretty great moment on that show. We always do the opening segment shirtless. There's a pretty great moment of that show where it was less attended than we wanted it to be, and I chucked my shirt. I go, someone catch, and it just slowly floated to where there was a bunch of nobody sitting there. It was a fun. I had so much fun that show, but it was because so many people there did not want us there.
By the way, speaking, you mentioned it was Indiana, and she was a trans woman. Did you hear
She'll
this?
probably listen to this.
This is actually a story. No, she won't. No one does. There's a story of Scarlett Johansson just reversed on playing a trans man in that movie.
Oh, she changed her mind.
She's not going to do it.
Yeah.
And, here's the...
Just like a woman who's playing a man.
I have a little sympathy. Yeah.
She changed her mind.
I have a little sympathy for her on this because when I read about the character, while the character certainly was, by today's standards, a trans man, at the time, it wasn't really thought of that way. She was simply thought of as a woman who chose to live as a man. She was still referred to as she and her, and not that that's a reflection on her, or excuse me, him. It was a reflection on the time, but I can understand why Scarlett might not have thought it was, quote unquote, playing a trans man when it was in fact what everyone else considered this man at the time to be just a lesbian pimp.
Right. Well, also, didn't that one dude who fingered a bunch of girls against his will, wasn't he playing a trans woman and he's just a straight dude and no one gave a shit?
Wait, was Larry Nassar a trans woman? I don't. The guy who
Jared Leto?
No, he was in Arrested Development. Didn't he get accused?
Franco?
You were. Oh no, you're
Franco.
Am I mixing up people?
You're
now?
mixing up
Okay.
two controversies. Yes, Jeffrey Tambor, who
him.
plays a trans woman on Transparent,
Right.
was accused of sexual harassment.
Oh, okay.
So who's handing out the fingerings though? That's
what
question.
I'm curious about. I'm sure.
I thought he...
Well, you're just harassing them.
I mean, it could have been any other story about anyone else who's famous, but my point is no one gave a shit that he was doing it. You know what I mean?
Right.
There was some controversy, but people kind of said, "Well, we'll deal with it because we wanted this show to exist, and it's being written by a trans woman." So, but it did. There were still plenty of people who were still like, "No, Jeffrey Tambor should not be playing a trans woman. They should get a real trans woman because it's not like there's that many parts for actual transgender people in Hollywood that they don't." But I think there's also the argument that people make, which may not be popular and may not be valid, but it is the one people make there, which is you're kind of more interested in watching someone who's not trans try to play a trans person
And
simply
see if they can do a good job.
Simply as an actor.
Right.
It's a harder role, and people just like it's also, I'm sure it would be harder for Jared Leto to play Barack Obama. It wouldn't be an easy acting job. It doesn't mean he should do it.
Okay, now I kind of want to see that just to see the backlash. And
I'll guarantee you he would do a better job at that than he did as the Joker.
He did. I mean, he played. Not trans, but cross-dresser in Dallas Buyers Club.
Oh, it was trans. Yeah, the character was trans.
Yeah,
it was trans. I couldn't remember. I was in a bad mood when I watched that movie. Great film, though. I remember great movie. I was just in a bad place. But yeah, so it's weird. It's weird how Like, isn't this this is the first time we've had an actor get bullied out of playing a trans role?
Trans man. There have been but even when in Dallas Buyers Club, people complained about
Right,
Jared
but
Leto.
not to the point where
They quit.
Right.
I mean,
I
is
also
that
feel like it's the times have changed. Like when that movie came out, like people were complaining about it, but I don't feel like it was such like a Me Too movement, like so pro trans, pro LGBT that the actor themselves felt like, you know, something. This is not a fight I feel like fighting. Like,
Right.
Like I feel like
she just played a white Asian character? She just
Yeah.
played Ghost in the Shell. She'd already pissed people off there.
Yeah.
Even though the character's a robot, it's a little bit less appropriative than maybe it's described as, because in Scarlett Johansson played a robot in Ghost in the Shell, which is of course a Japanese comic book and anime. So people were like, "Well, you're kind of playing an Asian character," and the argument was, "Well, no, I'm playing a robot made by Asians, so that's not necessarily playing an Asian character."
Why are these the arguments we're having?
It's a good point.
She was taking work away from Asian-looking robots.
Right, exactly, and you know, Scarlett's definitely, her heart seems in the right place. So I'll give her a pass and say that she probably did want to empower this character, and because, like I said, certain versions of the character, when I looked it up, like historically, did not describe her at all as a trans man. They just described her as a lesbian who wore suits. So I can see why maybe she thought she was going to play just a gay woman. So maybe that's why it was. And then later they were like, no, she actually wanted to be called him and her, him and his and he. So I get it. She was a pimp, by the way. So, you know, she does deserve her respect. It was probably very hard to be a lesbian pimp in the 70s.
It's tough out there for a female pimp.
Yes. It's hard out there for a pimp who's a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess, you know, honestly, it's not for me to say, because it's not an issue I'm close with. Some of the things, like, to me, it's mostly interesting that now is that people pick this role, and it's the first woman to man one, really, that it's been this bad. All the male to female ones got through.
I have a question. Just real quick, change the subject real quick.
Yeah.
This is a story that just came out today. That we found out that the law enforcement, U.S. law enforcement, was able to determine exactly when the Russians started hacking the DNC, started hacking into the Democratic Convention committee, got John Podesta's emails, when they did all that stuff, because now we're finding out that we have our espionage was actually pretty good, that now we were able to that with the help of some other countries, we bugged them, we found out exactly what they did, and we found out that the actual hacking occurred within hours of Donald Trump's announcement on TV. If there's any Russians out there listening,
Hey, Russia,
let's
you listening?
find her 30,000 emails.
yeah.
And so the argument now is, well, that does lend itself more to the idea that this was
Conspiring.
that
with
this was a direct
yeah.
thing, that this was about Trump taking advantage of a foreign government to win an election, which of course is illegal. Here's my question. This is what I think.
Yes, he's that stupid.
This is what I mean, he is stupid. On some level, he probably thinks if I said it in a speech as opposed to in private, that makes it okay, just like with his pardons. But here's what I think really happened. I still believe that we are currently watching the middle section of a long-term espionage act against Trump, and that when they started hacking into those emails the day he said it, that was specifically to make Trump guilty of something that they could then use against him. I don't think this was about helping him win the election as much as it was about, let's get a president in there that we can then blackmail.
That's interesting.
And I think that there's something weird about the way that the Russians have gone about
So he
this.
was set up.
I think he was absolutely set up.
That's interesting.
I think that Trump, and I obviously this is just pure conjecture. I don't have evidence. I'm not saying that like I know this is true, but
No, it's
it
interesting.
makes sense to me because, and I said this before, like on your show, that we saw that email that Donald Trump Jr. got from the Russians, and in that email it said, "I am a lawyer, and I am coming, and I have information about Hillary Clinton," and it said in the letter, "on behalf of the Russian government."
Right.
The only reason I can imagine for why they would specifically say this is coming from the Russian government is for the purpose of blackmailing him later. Because why would you ever spell it out because that lawyer knew they were committing a crime. Trump might have not known it's a crime, but the people sending it knew it's a crime.
Interesting.
I keep thinking of that, saying they're essentially sending him an email that said, "Hey, Donald, I have some very illegal material to give you. If you say the words YES in quotes, I will then send you this material quite illegally, and then we can illegally change the election." Like it seems, and then Donald Trump Jr., which is like, yes, for the love of God, give me all of it. And I just can't help but think, like,
this might have been, I mean, going with your theory, this might have been an Interpol sting that got completely out of control, where the Russians and the Americans were working together to get him.
Yeah, to get Trump Jr., you mean?
On money laundering.
Well, yeah, I mean, the money laundering is the whole other aspect, because that was what we know Trump was probably doing long before even running for president. We knew that they had all this money laundering stuff. I mean, Manafort, that's what he got arrested for, right? Isn't that what he's actually in jail for technically, or what he's going to be sentenced for, is the money laundering, even though it was before the election. And, you know, this is his buddy, the guy who got him, you know, as to win the primary. Now, of course, the other big thing that people have been talking about, not that it's new news, but it is something to talk about, is Paul Manafort's back in the news because, of course, he got arrested again for witness tampering.
Right.
He's under house arrest.
It's Paul
No,
Manafort,
he's in
the
actual
guy who
jail
sells
now.
The rugs. I don't know who that is.
Manafort sells what? Oh, the rugs? Is that it? I didn't know that that's the kind of rug. Paul Manafort was Trump's first campaign second campaign manager, and he's currently under house arrest. And he's been arrested for money laundering and.
So he's not on house arrest anymore. He's actually physically in a jail.
I
now.
apologize.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes,
But the
I meant to
jail's
say,
like a house, though.
he is.
Well, yeah, he's got special privileges, but he was on house arrest.
Yes,
where
excuse me.
He
Yes,
lived in his own home, but because
witness
of this
tampering.
witness tampering,
He started witness
yeah,
tampering,
exactly.
and they put him in actual jail. And this
Yeah.
is Trump's campaign manager.
Right.
And so here's what they were saying. This is what's coming
Like
back
2
up
or
about
3 weeks in jail.
Right. This was coming back about Paul Manafort. When he was Trump's campaign manager, and a lot of people were talking about would the Republican Party turn against him, even though he had won more votes, would they use the superdelegates to give it to Ted Cruz, which I think they didn't, just because Ted Cruz was the only other candidate they wouldn't do that for. If the last other person was like Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio, I think they absolutely would have, but they knew Ted Cruz was almost as bad as Trump.
Ted Cruz, he might have been worse. I know that's an insane
He's the
thing
only
to say,
person who
but
that's-
I think he might have been.
He's the only person where there is an argument there. There is a solid argument that of ways he could have been worse because of how.
Because he wouldn't have gotten caught.
Yeah, he's not dumb like Trump is. He could have gotten away with all the horrible things Trump is doing politically without all the stuff to use against him.
Right, and I think he would have gone over, gone a lot harder, in terms of things like birth. Like he was a religious nut.
He
like
would've
he
beat
would,
bad.
yeah.
I also think he could never have beaten Hillary. I think he's such a hateable person. He says he has no charisma that I don't think he could have won. But that's not here or there.
Right.
So Manafort, here's the thing, the one big thing Manafort did. Manafort was the reason that the Republican platform at the time in 2016, or I guess the end of 2015, stopped backing Ukraine. Because this is when Russia had invaded Crimea, had annexed Crimea extremely illegally, just invaded another country, and we just let them. And we were going to give weapons to Ukraine to fight Russia.
Right.
And Paul Manafort is understood to be the person who changed that and said, nope, we're okay with what they're doing.
Huh.
Here's the thing, though. There's nothing illegal about that. It's sleazy, and it's very odd, and there's no explanation for why the Republican Party that was always so hawkish and warlike when it came to Russia was suddenly, groveling to Russia. But we now know Manafort had these really bad ties to Russians. If Paul Manafort, as Trump's campaign manager, was bribed or even coerced into doing this, that's about as high a treason as you can get, right? I mean,
Well, don't we already know that Manafort had gotten money from these oligarchs that sued him because he hadn't paid them back?
Yeah.
So we kind of already know that he at least was.
He was getting big money. We even saw an email where he asked, I guess, one of the oligarchs how he could, quote, get whole. Was the
Right.
term whole with a W, as in that was the way they described how do we,
Recoup our money.
get our money back, because of course he was working for Trump for free.
Right.
Which is a very interesting thing that he was working for Trump for free. He didn't want a salary.
Because he was making the money.
Because
from
he's
the
making
oligarchs,
millions from-
and he just had to turn Trump's head to do what these Russians wanted to be done. But I don't know. I think that Trump has his own ties with Russia. Like he wanted to build that hotel in Moscow. He's really been trying to get involved with Russians since Reagan. Like he had offered back during Gorbachev to be some sort of liaison between the U.S. and the USSR at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that was literally Trump came out during the 80s and said, "Everyone, I should be the one to negotiate the nuclear weapons between U.S. and Russia."
He was 80s
Right.
Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
he really was.
Yeah.
He also, this was around the same time, he said,
Dennis
I should be the
Rodman's
one.
hair is better, though.
He said, I should be the one to negotiate peace in Israel at the time. He's
Yeah.
just a narcissistic idiot.
What was his reason for the Israel?
Because he's a genius.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
he's just he's the best negotiator ever lived, and he'll fix it. He's the kind of person who literally thinks a negotiation is about charisma.
Uh-huh.
Because when he talks about, he'll say, like, I have more chemistry with Kim Jong-un than what Obama did. You got to be dumb as living hell to think chemistry factors in to a country-to-country negotiation.
I don't know. I think Kim Jong-un spends a lot of time sitting and just like, man, I'd stop killing my citizens if I had more chemistry with somebody. I'm really lacking in chemistry right now.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of serial killers who just were like, once I found the right friends, I was fine again.
Do you think Kim Jong-un and Rodman are banging?
No.
I don't know. I
Wait,
feel like,
where's this coming
He's
from?
openly bi, right, Rodman?
Yeah,
That's true. Rodman is a bi.
But like, I feel like, why is he so interested in Rodman?
Oh, we know that. He loves basketball and he's a star fucker.
But like, he's not interested in Jordan. He's
Because
not.
Jordan's not going to North Korea.
But I'm sure.
Rodman would blow out his asshole. He would
Yeah.
destroy.
I don't know. My
If
vibe
Michael
is-
Jordan was willing to go to North Korea, he would never speak to Dennis Rodman again, Kim Jong-un. It's
I-
because
I
Dennis
don't
Rodman
think
is as
so.
famous as he can get his hands on. It's like him and Allen Houston are it's him and just every shitty, washed up
You don't
retired
think
player.
some CIA agent can talk to Michael Jordan and say, like, we need you to go over there, just shake this guy's hand, have
we
a
don't
dinner.
want him to.
But like,
Suck your
I'm
dick a
just
little bit.
like, if this is do it for your country. Like, I think that
Well, there's
I
nothing
think
in it.
he just. I personally, my thought is, I think Un has the hots for Rodman. I would not be surprised if they didn't have a little something going on.
I love the idea of finding peace in North Korea after just giving Kim Jong-un a couple black friends. I think that would, if that worked, that would be the greatest thing of all time.
I want nothing more than to find out that everything you're saying is true, except when they finally got in bed together and found out they're both tops, and it ruined the whole thing.
They just don't have the right
Rodman's
sexual
been
chemistry.
there more than
Yeah.
once. So
Rodman's a power forward.
Yeah, no, that's the thing in the gay community. Sometimes I have gay friends, and I was like, does this ever happen where two guys make out, go back home together, and then at the last second find out, oh wait, we both want to do the same thing? And
Yeah.
you got to be versatile. That's what they say these days.
right.
But yeah, it's a danger. No, I feel like they're both tops. That's my estimation. I feel like Kim. I see Kim as a strong top.
Kim's a bottom.
Hold on. I'm picturing something.
Just Dennis Rodman ping socking Kim Jong-un. I'm sorry.
All right, now it's too far.
Sorry. Okay, I found the line and I passed it.
Oh Jesus! It's a political show. Take that back to the Mean Boys, you degenerates.
Sorry, I've been pretty well behaved. I only mentioned Kim Jong-un getting pig sucked by Dennis Rodman
No, it's twice.
and asked a congressman what he knew about aliens, all right? I feel like
Oh, that I
all
liked.
things considered, all right, I'll tone it down.
No, I love the Space Force question. I really hope a senator is going to bring that up. A congressman is going to bring that up later. Be like, I was talking to someone recently, and he's from Central California about the Space Force.
What is it?
I will vote for whoever tells me the truth about aliens. That rules over everything.
That is I gotta say, I hate conspiracies. I have become a very, very anti-conspiracy guy, but I don't consider the aliens thing part of that Alex Jonesy right wing.
No, they take it places, but there's also like they have I'm with you.
That's what I mean. I'm saying like most conspiracies we think of now are just things that were made up by Alex Jones and other people who are just like, we lost the culture war. We need to figure out a new way of getting dumb people to hate blacks and Jews. Let's just tell them that there's like just some crazy conspiracy where the blacks were created in a laboratory and the Jews have robots and they're sending us out for. But like the aliens one, I don't know. I'm not saying I believe aliens, but I'm saying like that's one that I'm a little more open to.
I don't know if I believe it or not. I know there's something they're not telling us. We're building an army for space. Like you can't get any more weird. We've had very top secret military bases in New Mexico and Nevada for years and years and years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
Well, just because Kim Kardashian could theoretically be O.J. Simpson's daughter doesn't mean she is.
No, it's Chloe. Chloe's his daughter. But no, I don't think it's his daughter. But yeah, you're saying that's true. That's true, the exact truth. It's that there are some things that could be true, doesn't mean they are.
Right.
With aliens, it's more like, if there weren't aliens, it means that there was some, and this is very possible, that the government actually did want people to believe there were aliens for some other reason.
Right.
To cover up something else.
I just want to know what it is. Either way, you guys are hiding something, and
How come nobody saw aliens before World War II?
Before they were popular.
They have hieroglyphics of it.
There are alien stories throughout history, but you never really when there's stories about the hieroglyphics, and it could be aliens.
It could be something else.
Could have been like Greeks.
Well, like even during the gold rush when Chinese immigrants were like first coming to America, they would call them the Celestials because they thought they looked like aliens.
That is what they called them in Deadwood.
Yeah.
Dirt worshippers, they said, the Celestials.
Yeah.
I thought they were called Celestials because they worshipped their ancestors in the sky. Or they was literally because they looked like aliens?
I think it was because they were supposed to look like aliens.
It is the funniest. It is. I'm not a huge fan of ethnic slurs, but that is a hilarious one. Celestials.
That's one of the more fucked up ones now that I think. Like, yeah, you look like that thing we don't know exists or not. Like that's kind of a.
Yeah, when I was
just weird to me.
Actually, when I was on Mean Boys, I did I wrote. You weren't there. I wrote a game called Star Wars Species or Ethnic Slur, and Celestial.
No, I was. I think I was there for that one.
You weren't there for that one. I was very upset you weren't.
Oh,
I did
this is before I knew you, right?
Yeah, and then the later one I did a different one. It was which one is the real racist golden age superhero?
Oh, okay.
But yeah, and that one, Celestials, was the trick because it was both.
Yeah. Wait, there's a Star Wars species, Celestial?
There's a million friggin' species. If you include the books, it just goes on forever.
Now, how many times do you have to watch a Star Wars movie before you finally understand and keep all the characters straight?
Any day now.
Do you have trouble keeping everybody?
Yeah, I do.
You had the same problem with the Avengers. Did you even didn't you say you couldn't even follow that? And I'm like, really? You can't tell that the one who looks like spider is Spider-Man?
I couldn't even follow My Dinner with Andre. The two guys talking. Which one is Andre?
That is a deep pull. My Dinner with Andre. That's the the famous. It's just two guys having an awkward conversation movie.
Yeah,
and it's been parodied a lot. I only know what it is because it was parodied by Andy Kaufman and Classy Freddie Blassie. My Breakfast with Blassie.
Great movie.
I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, this was all about wrestling.
It's actually pretty funny, and then, God, I know there was it's one of those movies no one's seen, but I see it referenced all the time.
Wallace Shawn.
Yeah, it's just a movie about a guy who has to have a dinner he doesn't want to have with someone. Back in those days, where you could have a movie that was literally a dinner conversation.
Oh,
it's a great movie.
No,
it's just two people talking.
It's crazy. I can't even imagine that getting made today.
Today we call that a podcast.
Yeah, yeah. Not even like a popular one. It would just be. God, people were it was like boredom didn't exist in the 70s. Like people could watch a 45-minute setup in a movie.
Oh, I think right now boredom doesn't exist. I think people are so forgiving of everything. They just stare at Hours.
What's the opposite? Now people are terrified of being bored.
But they put up with so much crap.
They're not bored by it somehow.
There are a lot of stans who are willing to put up with a lot.
Really? What do you mean?
I think, binge viewing, and there's a lot of...
That's stimulation, though. That's like keeping your mind busy.
Yeah.
People like to keep their minds busy with nothing real, just like busy work.
But it's boring, and they're putting...
Right, but sorry.
There's no quality to what they're watching. They're just like endlessly consuming hours of like visual McDonald's.
Yeah, well, if you can stare at crap, you don't have to look at the crap in your own life, and that's what the people are more and more enabled to look at themselves, and the television's a good way to escape it.
I think their attention span is much longer now than it was back in the 70s.
They're not really paying attention. They're just kind of using it to create static in their brain.
Well, I mean, is it an attention span that lets you binge watch a show, or is it the opposite? Is the attention span the ability to not be entertained by something but still pay attention to it?
I don't know.
But like if you're binge watching something, like I binge watch a lot of shows, but I'm not 100% paying attention to any given show. Like I'm watching it, I'm in the kitchen, I'm on my phone, like I'm doing stuff. It's just kind of like white noise in the background, but I'm not really.
What are you binge watching these days, Maris?
I'm re-watching Nip Tuck, actually.
Oh, for God's sake.
Yep. That's what I'm doing.
What is-
you asked
what
the
is
question.
Nip Tuck is an older, it was like a few years ago, it was a show about plastic surgery.
Oh.
And I was never, it was popular. I was never into it.
How many hours can you watch a day?
I can finish a season
In one day?
in one day,
I
yeah.
guess if it's like a 10-hour show.
Or 12. Like I can literally, if I'm into the show, I will finish the whole season. Because then, like sometimes, like if I get really jazzed about it, then I'm like, oh my God, I had to like start the next one. But yeah,
You're talking about watching 12 hours straight.
yeah, I can do
That's
it.
amazing.
Yeah, I can do it.
You know, and that I think that should be about the writing. If it's a good show, makes you want to keep going. A good show makes you want to keep watching it. I mean, I as writers, that's something we should appreciate.
Yeah, but I'm not trying to be rude, but does it ever occur to you that maybe you should be doing something else?
Well, I am while I'm watching it. That's what my whole point was, is that like you're never completely.
She's doing her laundry. She's doing dishes. I get that.
Yeah. I might be like writing while I'm watching it, but I'm not, or talking on the phone or texting people or Facebooking or, cleaning my closet. But it like that was my whole point, is
And
that
do you
when
feel you're being cheated, though? Like, are you able to follow everything? Like the Americans, you have to pay attention to.
Oh, it's such a good show. You should watch The Americans.
I haven't seen it.
It's so freaking good.
Yeah.
That's the show about Russian spies in the 80s.
Oh.
It's amazing.
I think I saw a preview for that.
It's my uncle. I told him to watch it, and he was like, "I can't watch it." I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "Just pisses me off too much. Those Russians making us look so bad." I'm like, "That's so funny that like he couldn't watch it because he took it personally that they were making us look like fools in the show." I love that.
Like now with Trump.
Well, yeah, and
They don't look like fools now. They
yeah, exactly. No, they're making us look like fools again. Yeah, my uncle though, that's another guy is a lifelong Republican, voted for Hillary. Because of the smart Republicans, the ones who were like honorable people who just, didn't want to pay as many taxes were like, no, I'm not going to throw my future away on this idiot.
right.
No, it's a scary thing that like just considering how many Republicans left him, yet how many he picked up. Well, the thing is, Trump picked up all the people who didn't vote at all.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, it's that's exactly what he did.
He picked up all the people who just sat in their basements listening to Tool, calling people faggots
Would you
on
stop
YouTube.
describing me?
Hey, I like Tool too.
Yeah. No, but that's exactly what he did. No, and it's weird to think like there were a lot of things like I feel like he picked up on a lot of mentally unwell people. He picked up on a lot of categories, and after
A lot
the
of
election,
drug addicts.
Yeah. No, there was like at the at the end of the election, I kind of like looked and I was like, man, he really targeted a lot of the I fitted a lot of his demographics, and I'm glad that I didn't vote for him. Of course, I never would have. I thought I was a piece of shit from the beginning.
But you do look like someone who would.
But
wear
I was
American...
like, wow, he was targeting me to be the kind of people to vote.
Yeah, you
for
look
him.
like you could be standing behind him wearing American flag Ray-Bans.
Yeah. It made me feel very gross to be like, oh, that's I was who he was looking for.
Let me ask you, because a lot of people are very upset about Trump, right? You're upset.
Yes, we all are.
If you hibernated and you just turned off your phone, or you blocked Trump and lived your life for the next 3 years, and assuming you're not an undocumented worker, because I think they're the ones who are being victimized by ICE. I think that's the only real story.
They happen to be the biggest punching bag of his administration today, yeah.
Right. So if you take, because that is the original sin of the Trump administration, the other stuff is horrible, but if you stop paying attention and you wake up 3 years from now, could you live your life and not be upset?
We don't know, because you could find you wanted to get an abortion and can't. You could find you don't get your health care that you need to survive. There's a lot of ways this could fuck us. You could
wake up into a nuclear winter.
You could also find out. It could also just be that your grandkids aren't going to be able to live anywhere at sea level. I mean, it could be that bad. It really could. It's not just optics. He's hurting people in a real life way. And I mean, we don't even think about the level of dealing with people in the future who grew up under Trump and were led to believe that he was someone to be respected. We have no idea how much worse our lives are going to be simply by the human beings that we have to live on this earth with, who now think that's a role model. That alone, I mean, you could get beaten to death in traffic because of a person like that.
Well,
I also feel like even when we're going back to this immigration thing, like all of these kids that are being separated from their parents, like we're basically constructing mass murderers, terrorists, serial killers because
thank God we're locking them up then. Jesus.
It's like the psychological damage that is happening to them now at such an impressionable age. Like we're going to see the repercussions of this in at least 15, 20 years.
Yeah, who could blame that kid for hating Americans after this?
But do you ever worry that maybe you're blaming Trump for your own inadequacies and misery? I hate Trump, obviously.
Well, we didn't make the decision to separate these kids.
I know, but I can't figure out how much of my unhappiness stems from just my ineptitude.
Here's
or
the
Trump's.
thing: the exact argument you're making could be made identically about black kids being shot by the police, about environmental regulations going away, about farmers being squeezed out by factory farm. There are so many ways that people suffer that you could have you could say, hey, if you just stop paying attention, it wouldn't affect you. And a lot of those are true, and you should care. This one actually isn't. This one, there are so many ways that this could potentially affect your life. And I've talked to people about, you got $800 more a year. You really don't think that it's going to even out in any other way? You don't think that the fact that you might end up having to pay substantially more for your health care, or that there's going to be just less infrastructure in the area you live in, you could end up spending that much because one pothole wasn't filled because we don't give money to the local municipalities anymore. People are so short-sighted about what is happening, and you don't think about it as being a direct correlation, but crime goes up when you offer less people food stamps. Crime goes up when you have less children being given after-school programs, which is happening now. Right now, because of decisions that Donald Trump made, there are no longer free condoms in multiple African countries. These are countries we used to give them millions of free condoms to try to help HIV, and Trump stopped that because, for obvious reasons, he considers these shithole people, and he could not care less about continuing the good work that both Obama and George W. Bush did of stemming AIDS in Africa. AIDS in Africa is starting to come back for the first time in decades because Trump doesn't give a shit. And that there are so many ways that can end up affecting your life in ways that you don't really see. It's not going to be a direct thing. There's so little ways it's going to fuck us.
Do you think this economy is as good as people say it is? Because I don't think the economy's that good. And I can't tell if it's me or the economy.
I think
I think it's both.
it's a semantics question. What is good? Is good if you're saying good compared to what people once considered good life? No. Compared to what it will be the rest of time? Yes. Because things aren't getting that much better economically. We've had this discussion. Me and David have had this discussion about like automation and robots. And my attitude is you can't just not have robots because then the other countries that have them will crush us over in the long term. And that you have to just accept the fact that eventually there will be significantly less jobs, and it will be the responsibility of the wealthy and the government to take care of the people who are left behind in that economy. Just like in Star Trek, where everyone has universal income. And everyone just given what they need because there's so few jobs because everything's done with technology.
Is that what happens in Star Trek?
Yes. Star Trek is an ideal. It's a globalized economy. It's a one-world government.
Wait. In the movies?
Earth. Yes, and the TV show.
On the TV show?
Well, it's all the same. It's one canon. For God's sake, David. It's all one storyline that in Star Trek, the planet Earth is one world government, and it's part of the Federation of Planets, and that everyone is provided everything they need, and there's no such thing as poverty because technology fixed the problem. But at the same time, there is not a need to work. You work because you want to, because you have a passion for something, meaning that everyone is provided with all they need.
And are they happy, or is it dystopian?
Well, it's Star Trek, so it's perfect. They're happy. In Star Trek, Earth is the utopia, and it's the other planets that they have to, help. Now, it's Star Trek, so it's not real. But
I'm glad you know that.
Yeah, so we don't know if it would work, but it is an ideal version of a future. It seems like the only version of the future that is sustainable. One where you're taken care of because people can. So
I don't.
That's why it's anyway. To answer your question, that's why it's better than Star Wars. Star Trek. You mentioned Star Wars before, which I'm not a big fan.
We went from politics, which I don't know a lot about, to Star Trek, which I somehow know less about. We're covering all the things that
So I think with the economy, like I think that it is it's going to get worse, but we haven't really seen yet exactly how. Just with the tariffs alone, eventually these companies are going to lay off more people because they have to spend more money because of the tariffs. So I think
Are we sure about that? Because I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Okay.
Maybe the tariffs are good. Maybe China is a bad country. Maybe they have human rights violations that are even worse than the United States. Maybe we shouldn't be doing business with China. Maybe they cheat. Maybe they have their own.
I mean, that's probably true, but that's also probably not the best reasons to make that decision.
But there's been a race to the bottom. All our manufacturing jobs. I know they say manufacturing has gone up in the past couple of years, but the fact is we don't really make anything here in America. There's a race to the bottom when it comes to wages. I'm not defending Trump, but...
Well, we know that he's certainly not doing it for the right reasons. He's doing it because he just needs to make enemies to keep us, on his side.
He just likes the concept of a trade war, but I don't necessarily think he has any sort of understanding of what the implications of that is. I just think he thinks that it's tough to say.
Well, look,
But
it probably isn't going to help us economically.
Aren't we? Well, how do we know that? I mean, we did business with Nazi Germany, and we ruled the day. Eventually, we said this was wrong.
Did we? I mean, did we ever actually say we shouldn't have worked with them?
I mean, we profited off of it.
That's the thing. It's like it did work. We say it was a bad idea because after it's over, we can say, having all this money in our pockets, say, oh, man, I wish I hadn't done that.
Yeah, but I mean, when you look at what China is doing in Tibet, and it's pronounced the Uyghurs, they're the Muslims who live in Western China. They've turned that into...
I will give anything. I want so badly to find out that is not how you pronounce it.
It is. I watched them...
I thought those were the cousins of the Gigolos.
Yeah. But when you look at the way they treat their people, should we be doing business with them?
But do you honestly think that his reasoning for a trade war has anything to do with the Uyghurs of Tibet?
Well, but maybe it does have something to do with bringing jobs back to America.
And
increasing wages.
There's no reason to think it's going to bring jobs back because we're losing more jobs over the people who can't afford the steel that they were making things out of. So we already know that there's more jobs in receiving Chinese metal than in selling the steel ourselves. I think it's just because everything he does is about taking advantage of what he thinks the people who are the least informed will agree with. Mm-hmm. And to them, they say, we should make them pay more. They want to sell us metal. It's like, yeah, more. Like that. They just hear that one word. But I think this anti-globalization doesn't really go anywhere. I think it just everyone just trying to be their own little country and not trading and not, working together. It just seems like you're fighting the future.
I also don't see how it can't force an inflation because like all of these items, their prices are going to increase because of the tariffs, and then people's wages are not going to increase, but all of the things you want to buy are going to be increased. So I don't really understand how that's not going to force inflation, which will then also be more detrimental to the economy than it already is.
I mean, he broke the Iran deal, and that's why gas went up.
Right.
Just plain and simple. The first time a president actually did affect gas prices. I don't think he cares at all about how things are going to affect the economy. I think he just stop it. I think he just shaving whatever that you're making.
Is it making noise?
Yeah. No, I think he just wants enemies and he needs them every day.
One last question.
Yeah.
It's your show, but I just wanted to ask you
Okay.
this. The Chinese are reciprocating by invoking tariffs on products that are in key states that the Republicans need to win the midterms.
Uh-huh.
What's worse, what the Chinese are doing to influence our our midterm elections, or what the Russians do? If you're employing tariffs,
number one, are we certain that these tariffs that China is sending to us are specifically to punish the Republican states, or is that just because the Republican states are the ones that usually do more manufacturing?
no, but they're targeting whiskey, bourbon, which is Kentucky.
Right.
They're going after soy, which is Iowa. They're going after.
Do you think it's
soy
specific?
is really hipsters?
Do you think it's specific?
No. Soy is in everything.
Yeah, he knows.
Soy is no. I have an allergy. Soy is in. If you rattle off whatever you ate today, unless it's produce, it's in everything. It's even in the meat you eat because that's what they feed the animals.
Tom is a vegetarian who can't eat soy, so you can imagine he knows a lot about soy.
I know. Wait, it's turtles and soy, man. I know so much shit. Soy is so overproduced and subsidized by the government, and it's really bad for everybody.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, it's terrible for you. There have been some studies that have found links
To prostate cancer.
well, that and even in childhood autism, because soy absorbs minerals and vitamins, and it so you get less of it, your minerals and vitamins, as a kid. And they found that a lot of children who were fed soy milk instead of breast milk or formula, much higher autism.
Can you eat beans?
The soybeans? No, I can't. I mean, here's the thing: if you eat it in small amounts, you should be fine. Women can eat a little bit more of it than men can because of the phytoestrogen. But even it's in too much of the average woman's diet in America as well. But yeah, it's really bad. It's in almost anything shelved.
It's why so many vegetarians look so unhealthy.
You have all this extra estrogen, and there's also a lot of ways to do vegetarianism poorly.
Right, and the people who just eat these giant slabs of soy all the time.
Yeah, it's bad, and people say there was a big push for it in the 90s because it was low in fat and high in protein, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But what you're saying about China, I don't know. I did not know that they were targeting Republican states. I thought it was just sort of those are the states that make the things that they were buying. But it's not that bad because
They're transparent about it, though.
Yeah, they're kind of just saying you're screwing with us, we're going to screw back. It's not like, and also there's nothing illegal about it. The major thing we keep forgetting about Russian tampering was that they broke the law. They stole, they lied, they copied copywritten pages to make people believe they were watching something on NBC when they weren't. That's a big difference in this. And if China wants to hurt Trump in retaliation for him playing hardball with them, I mean, why shouldn't they? It's not like they're doing it because they're calling Joaquin Castro and being like, hey, listen, we're going to do this we're going to put in these tariffs, but you got to make sure that they get dropped if you become president. He's the only person I can think of off the top of my head who might run, and I'm pretty sure he's not. Personally, I'm a Mike O'Malley man. Remember Mike O'Malley?
Baltimore.
Yeah, he was the Mike O'Malley.
Actor for Austin Powers.
Mike Myers.
Yeah.
Was it Mike O'Malley or Martin O'Malley? Martin O'Malley, thank you. He was the guy running against in the primaries with Bernie and Hillary that no one even acknowledged his existence. I did though because he was 55 and had ripped abs, so that's a president. He's just he looks like central casting for a president, and it's so funny looking back on it. Man, he would have won so easily. He just had no baggage, and everyone just was everyone was so swept up in Hillary and believing that, oh, we know the emails aren't a big thing, so we assume everyone else will. Oh God, I hate this country.
So, talking about the emails and Trump, did you guys watch the Peter Strzok hearings?
Oh God, yes. David and I talked about it on his show yesterday, and. Jesus Christ, that was embarrassing.
What happened?
So basically, Peter Strzok, real background, was the FBI investigator. He was a assistant deputy FBI. He
right underneath Comey.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. He was in charge of, or one of the people in charge of the investigations, both into Hillary's emails and into Trump's Russian collusion, specifically before the election. And some people hacked into his texts, and they found that he was having an affair with one of the women that he was working with, and that they had a bunch of texts between each other personally saying things like, God, this Trump guy is just a nightmare. I can't believe, people are falling for this. He's going to lose every state. And at one point they were like, he's such a detestable piece of shit. He goes, don't worry, we'll stop him. And the Republicans have all tried to say that, well, that text proves that Donald Trump is innocent and that you were framing him. And they had this for 10 hours, something like that.
Yeah,
he sat there while every Republican senator and congressman got all emotional and really showed how hurt they were. And I can't believe you would be so biased. And they sucked because they gave this guy, Peter Strzok, the opportunity to sit there and say, well, I'd like to respond to each one. And the funny thing was, every one of them would say something to him and it wouldn't be a question. And then he'd be like, well, I'd like to respond to that. And they would say, well, it wasn't a question, so you can't respond. And then the Democrats in the committee would be like, no, you have to let him. You just accused him of something.
Right.
You have to let him speak. And Louis Gohmert, who I mentioned earlier, the most spineless weasel in Congress, the way that he was like, did you look at your wife and lie to her the way you're lying to us? And then Strzok says, all right, I'd like to respond to that. And he goes, he's not allowed to respond because I didn't ask a question. And then they said, well, he's going to respond. And he goes, well, that means you're changing the rules for him. He was such a little bitch. It was unbelievable. And so
I would have said, no, I looked at my wife the way Donald Trump looked at Melania when she found out about Stormy Daniels.
But what they did was they did exactly what I was hoping was going to happen. They say to him, how could you? They kept saying, well, you were biased. He goes, I'm not biased. I hate the man, but I'm not biased. I did my job. He goes, he said, make very good answer. He goes, number one, the Inspector General already went through this and said that I did not do anything improper. Number two, I don't know if you know this, but the FBI is run in such a way that it would be impossible for me to frame the man because there's so many other people seeing everything I'm doing.
Right.
Which is a very good point.
And when did the GOP ever be against bias?
Yeah, it's amazing because obviously it begs the question, all of you people here interrogated Hillary Clinton about her emails.
Right.
Are you going to tell me none of you have ever said anything negative about Hillary Clinton in a personal conversation, you fucking liars?
Yeah.
But more importantly, they gave Strzok the opportunity to do exactly what I was hoping for, which is where they say, well, you said this thing about he's a detestable human being. And then he said, yes. And then he starts listing the reasons he said it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he goes,
Yeah.
yeah, I did say he's a detestable human being because what he said about the Gold Star family of Khizr Khan and that man died in its service and he insults him. Yes, I did say that. And you could see the Republicans, they kept doing the same thing. They're like, well, I agree about that, but they kept having to say that. And you put him in a position to remind all of us that, yeah, every horrible thing he said about Trump was completely reasonable because it was true, because he's a psychotic piece of shit. And you're reminding everyone that you're basically trying to argue that there's nothing bad he's ever said that deserved people to. And then other senators, the Democrats, started listing things that Republicans had said about Trump. Yeah. And how much they hated him.
Yeah.
And saying, and said, Mr. Strzok, did you say, and he would read a quote from like Mitch McConnell before the election.
Right.
And saying, I will never
that's
support
genius.
this man. This man is a horrible human being. This is an embarrassment for our nation. And then saying, how come none of these people are being called biased? It was, and I said this on your show, this is what I mean more than anything. You knew that these Republicans knew they didn't have shit because they were all mad. They were all banging the table. How dare you, sir? That's not what someone who's got shit on you acts like.
Yeah.
When they know they got you dead to rights, they sit there calmly like, what do you have to say about this?
Yeah.
Because if Donald Trump were the one being interrogated, I guarantee you one thing. Every single one of those senators would have wanted to hear his answer.
Right.
And none of them wanted to hear Peter Strzok's answers. They all wanted to be able to put on a big show and have him sit there. And he came off so real in comparison to them
Yeah.
that it was really impressive.
Well, Trey
I'm going
Gowdy
to watch it on C-SPAN tonight.
Trey Gowdy seemed more unhinged than normal also, and I feel like every
'Cause he
single
knows.
day, like he just seems to be like more and more unhinged and has less grasp of reality.
Well, nobody wants to be defending him. Nobody wants to be in the position where they have to pretend this is normal behavior.
Is that a good assignment for tonight, to go home and watch C-SPAN?
Oh, absolutely. I think you really enjoy it. Don't just watch the clips. I mean, I sat and watched this.
I mean, you've got 9 hours on your hands. Just
I'm going
binge
to binge
it.
watch it,
Yeah.
Yeah, use that 70s sense of ability to pay attention to things. But yeah, I know we must not have much time left. But before we get out of here, yeah, I would definitely encourage anyone to check out the hearings, because I honestly believe if you watch those hearings, you will even if you're not on his side now, you will say this sounds like a normal guy who just shared his political opinions and did his job, being interviewed by a bunch of panicked liars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might even watch that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
The Louis Gohmert one especially. But there was some woman. I mean, this is how I knew that they were in trouble. This is how I knew they didn't know what they were doing. When I swear to God, I saw them do this, where the one guy was like, I see that you sent 700 text messages in 1 week. I thought you were working for the government. And the guy goes, well, those were all texts about work
texts.
between people at work. It was 700 in a week. If 100 texts in a day seems like a lot to you, you probably don't own a phone. Like, I don't know how old this guy was,
Right.
but he was acting like, he kept being like, well, I don't see how you had time to do your, and the guy was like, I'm at work, I'm at the FBI from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Right.
I'm texting my coworkers.
Yeah.
It was pathetic. This guy, Peter Strzok, should run for office because he didn't. It's amazing that they this is all they have left. This is all they have to cling to. You hated him. You hated Donald Trump, and that's how we know he's innocent. Once again, could you imagine somebody watching Law and Order and they're like, "We got to find this rapist. Oh, I can't wait to get this piece of shit." How many of these people jump up in that moment and go, "He's innocent"?
Right.
Every investigator thinks the person they're investigating is a piece of shit because they see the things they've done.
Right. That's their job is to explore the piece of shit.
But he wasn't particularly pro Hillary either, and like they seem to kind of like gloss over the fact that he had just as many negative things to say about her as well.
And Bernie. He was
Yeah.
just a guy who talks shit.
Yeah, he
was-
hated everybody.
Which is honestly, those
the
are the
most
guys I
unbiased
want
thing.
in the FBI. I want
Everybody's a piece of shit equally.
yeah.
Yeah, I want a guy who's a pit bull, a guy who's going after someone. This is serious stuff we're doing here. There's a reason this guy got to that position. He's good at his job.
Yeah.
No, it's honestly amazing that it was. And I forgot who it was. There was one woman, and it just that's how you know they don't have anything when they have to make it so dramatic and so emotional. And she's like, I cannot believe the disrespect you are showing us. is what the one woman was saying. It was like, no, what you can't believe is that this is going so badly.
Yeah.
Because I think he had a smirk on his face. He had the smirk on his face of a guy who knows you got nothing on me. Because he didn't do anything. He did his job.
Right. Yeah.
All right, should we be wrapping this up?
Yeah, we should wrap this up. But
This was fun.
yeah, thank you guys for doing the show.
Thanks for
and,
having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on. And before we go, just tell everyone where they can follow you on social media, what projects you have going on. I'll start with you, Tom.
Yeah, Goss6 on Twitter and Instagram, and Mean Boys Podcasts on wherever you can find podcasts if you enjoy. It's completely uneducated, segmenty game. Like there's
Very funny.
You're not gonna learn much, but you'll laugh, But it's yeah, and we're all idiots and we enjoy being idiots. But yeah, Mean Boys Podcast, Goss6 on Twitter and Instagram.
David Feldman Show on iTunes. Love to have all you guys on and gals. And David Feldman on Twitter. David_Feldman_. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Thanks for being here. Dave?
Dave Cyrus with an S. And all my gigs will have already happened by the time this airs.
Follow the show on Twitter at The Blame Storm. Follow me on Twitter at Marissa Smith. And if you enjoy the show, you guys, please rate, review, and subscribe. You can catch me at Greenwich Village Comedy Club on July the 28th at 7 p.m. I believe Dave is also going to be there. And we will talk to you next time, guys.